This episode of Instant Speed Podcast is brought to you by FAB Cards. Located in Utah, FAB Cards is a smart choice for all of your flesh and blood needs. Prepare for the battles you'll face through the world of Wraith by gearing up at kfabcards.com. That's KAYFABECARDS.com and get all of the cards shipped directly to your door. Hey, if Magic or Pokemon is your jam, they've got you covered. FAB Cards has a plethora of TCG options, sealed products, and singles to keep you collecting and keep you competitive. FAB Cards, be who you want to be. This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 74. Our guests today, the world number one, the world champion Michael Hamilton will be joining us, as well as the number 2 rated limited player in the world. That would be Daniel Rutkowski. We're going to talk about prepping you for the pre-release weekend coming up right now. All right, so let's get to the news first. Again, this episode is brought to you by FAB Cards. Awesome stuff. The BNR announcement, the bans and restriction announcement come up. No changes. Thank you, Brian Gottlieb. We even got that message earlier than expected. The next BNR is going to be on May 4th and maybe possibly sooner. Who knows? But doubtful because the Pro Tour is going to be happening on the last weekend of April, and there's no way they're going to change things leading up to that. An errata bulletin just dropped, considering that there are some wordings that need to be changes for certain cards. Give and take and back heel kick have some erratas. You can go to fabtcg.com to go check out precisely what has changed regarding those particular cards. Beyond that, well, a new Fable has leaked. It is Plague Hive, a yellow pitch gem that at random generates for your opponent a Blood Rot, a Frailty, or an Inertia token. Debate about the power level of this. Is it just right? Is it too much? Is it, again, just forgettable? That is up for debate. Nonetheless, it is a fabled card that everybody is going to want to get their hands on. Pre-release weekend is going to kick off on March 17th. Hey, that could be in a day or two for you, depending on when you're listening to this, but there's probably still time for you to go ahead and check out one of the pre-release events all around the world. I will be at Harry Tarantula in Toronto on Friday, as well as WNY Gaming in Buffalo on Sunday. So I'm going to be doing a 2-pack of pre-releases. I'm super excited, and I want to be best prepared specifically for this type of event. So I've brought on 2 of my friends. That would be Michael Hamilton and Daniel Rutkowski, the number 4 and number 2 respectively ELO limited players in the world, to get you prepped for pre-release and limited for outsiders. ISP is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. Yeah, all my cards, they fit snugly into a perfect fit, and then we slide them right into an Elite 2 sleeve. Those cards, hey, well, they're resting easy and protected in my Deck Vault 100. Ooh, it's a nice one. Well, all of my spiciest gems, well, they're on display in my Z Folio LX. Yeah, you could treat your collection with love by going to bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Oh, yeah. And hey, maybe cards might not be your only thing. Are you into coins, comics? Maybe you want to show off your record collection? They've got you covered. Use the code ISP10 at checkout for 10% off your BCW Supplies purchases. BCW Supplies. Protect, store, display. The Instant Speed Podcast is very happy to welcome 2 of the world's best limited ranked players in the entire world, or this world that we know of. We've got, first up is a top 4 finisher at, I believe it was Worlds, if I'm not mistaken, as well as a runner-up at the U.S. National Championships. That would be one Daniel Rutkowski, as well as, hey, the dude he lost to at U.S. National Championships, as well as the world number 1, I guess, player you can consider, which would be Michael Hamilton, the world champion. Gentlemen, it's nice to see you. Thank you so much for doing the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Oh, you liar. You absolute liar. That's
I would have said no if I didn't want to be here.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? That is actually very, very kind of you. You know that in the grand scheme of this entire show, I think that only one person has outright declined being on it. Did you know that? Do you guys want to know who it is?
Definitely, yeah.
You have to wait until the Go Again segment, which is a Patreon only exclusive. See, that's called a hook. And then we reel them in, baby. We reel them in. All right. So the whole, theme of this episode is that we want to talk about Limited because Outsiders pre-release is happening in about a day and a half when this gets published, which will be on Thursday. It's currently the 14th, a Tuesday. But people want to know, they want to get some insight in terms of how they themselves can kind of just go ahead and spike one of these pre-releases. But just in general, this has been advertised. This has been advertised for gosh knows how many months by LSS. But more specifically, Brian Gottlieb has been pumping the tires of this set as being a limited or draft, basically God set. It is the best thing that they have published in terms of draftable sets and limited. So I got you two clowns on here because this is the circus that we want to put on. That we're in the big house now. So first things first, my friends, which is going to be Outsiders specifically in general. And I want to get your thoughts and your initial kind of musings about Outsiders. We'll start with you, Daniel. Outsiders was announced. You are the number 2 limited player in the world. That is incredible. So congratulations on that. And when they announced Outsiders as being a limited, godly type set, now that you've seen some of the cards, what are your thoughts regarding Outsiders?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I'm just super excited to draft a new set. Really wish every set was a draft set. I think it's hard at first glance. Obviously, I want to play with the cards more, but I think they got the balance pretty good. One thing I noticed is I kind of identified 5 power categories, which is access to go again attacks, attack reactions or evasion, defense reactions or anti-evasion, a lot of block 3s, and then good weapons. And every class or hero even appears to have 3 out of the 5. So based on that, I'm kind of thinking the balance is pretty good. And it feels like you're going to have to draft pretty well to have a functioning deck that can use all your cards every turn.
That's an interesting point that you make there because drafting well obviously is a skill set in its own. Mm-hmm. But I think that for a set like Outsiders, it's going to be more important. We'll get into that more specifically, Daniel, but I want to ask you, Michael, what your initial impressions are of Outsiders as a set.
Yeah, honestly, it just looks really cool. I am also very excited to get into it, and I am very excited to have a draftable set. Similar to Daniel, I do also wish every set was draftable. Supplemental sets have some cool cards, but nothing beats being able to just draft and play limited with the cards.
I feel like there's just this different, it's kind of like you're going through the seasons. We're in the winter months of obviously we're in the winter months for people on this side of the, this hemisphere, but we're in the winter months of what Flesh and Blood is, which is when there's a draftable set, you kind of want to go to your armories, you want to go to these events, you want to draft, and then kind of you have these supplementals where I don't want to go to my armories. I don't want to sort of live in the same meta, I don't want to be drafting, Uprising for the 468th time anymore. And I'm pretty sure that's a sentiment I think that we're all, we can all kind of adhere to. I want to ask you two specifically because a lot of your competitive careers have been, these multi-format major tournaments, culminating in what Worlds was, which was all 3. You had Draft, Constructed, and Blitz. But you guys must be you probably never want to see another Uprising draft again, Michael. I have to ask you if would you do it? If it was, is this something that you still find joy in of just picking up 3 packs of not Dynasty, of Uprising and drafting them?
Yeah, I would still draft Uprising happily. I think the format, people give it a lot of crap, and I think a lot of that is because it was around for so long, but I don't think the format was actually that bad. The game's played pretty well, except 5 mirrors. I could never play another 5 mirror in my life and I'd be good, but at least limited, especially limited 5 mirrors. But I think outside of the 5 mirror, the other 8 matchups played really well. Is that right? That's not right.
Well,
6 matchups, however many matchups there are.
yeah, there was a ton of them, I think. And I mean, for you, Dan, you're like you were known as like a FI master in itself.
Sure.
Were the FI mirrors just as unappealing to you as they were to Michael?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've identified like how to win that matchup going first, but I prefer to not have to.
Oh, so going second was just basically the way to go.
It's hard to lose going second. Though your opponent needs like lava burst or breaking point or something.
Okay, well, this is where we're gonna dig into what Outsiders is specifically from the limited standpoint, the strategy and such. But before we get to that, I do want to ask you regarding the new Fable, which is Plague Hive, and it's it's such a fine balance when you have this chase card, where you want people to be happy to open it. However, you don't want the people who don't open it to feel completely isolated and not part of the fun in a degree. And, I think that moving forward, the specializations of having like a Viscerai specialization was pretty cool. Heart of Findle wheeled its way in because of, you, Michael Hamilton, to a degree in the Icelander list. But I mean, just pure part and parcel of the fact that you're playing a hero that automatically has benefit from picking up that 3-pitch card. Do you guys feel that what LSS is doing, printing cards that are in the highest tiered category of rarity, being playable or even very good plus? Daniel, do you think that this is something that they should continue doing, or was the Command and Conquer Marvel the perfect frequency for what you're dialing into when it comes to a Fable?
Mm-hmm. I definitely prefer the CNC reprint route. I don't think the gems are like a bad thing. I think they have done pretty well with the balance of them, where like there's like niche cases where like they are constructed playable, but it's also like it's like hard to find out, right? If you're a more casual player, you don't have to spend $500 to get your 1% advantage, right? Like I don't know. And if you're like a Pro Tour competitive player, you're gonna have that card anyway. So I think they're both good, but I definitely prefer the reprint aspect.
It's funny you should say that, because I was talking today on stream regarding people min-maxing cards and making sure you get that 1 extra percent. And I was like, I remember paying like $60 to buy a 3-pack of Fine Centers because it was another blue pitch, 0 cost that had a 2 attack instead of a 1 attack. And I was like, the numbers matter. It absolutely matters. Michael, how about on your side? You've played decks with Heart of Findle as being, a very key piece of the deck and gaining life and such. Do you think that this is something that LSS should continue doing, printing these fables that have, I don't want to say drastic impact, but do increase your the weight of your deck by a decent margin?
Yeah, I actually really don't like this, that they have, even when the cards only slightly increase your win rate. I think it's like pretty bad to have that price tag. And people they look at the decks that win worlds, they look at the decks that do really well at tournaments, and they're like, this deck costs $1,500. I'm not playing this game. And I think that scares players away. And I think that's like just a pretty bad thing if these cards are aimed at being even fringe constructed players. Then when the decks do well, especially when LSS misses a little bit on power level and it's a little bit better than they intended it to be, then suddenly you have a problem. And I think Heart of Findle costing $500, and I'd even go as far as Tunic being a problem too, but especially Heart of Findle and the Fables, I think that I would prefer to stick in the direction of the Command and Conquer reprint, where it looks really cool and you can bling out your deck with it. And I think that's just a better direction for cards that are 1 in 10 cases or something.
Yeah. Well, I have opened exactly 0 Fables in my entire life. It is incredible because I think I've opened the equivalent of about like 50 boxes of Flesh and Blood in my entire life, and I've not once touched a Fabled like out of a pack. I bought a my own Heart of Findle actually ahead of Worlds. I showed up at Worlds on the Friday morning or the Thursday morning or whatever it was, asking every vendor, because at the time I think it was hovering sub 200 for a Heart of Findle. And I was like, okay, and I'm not going to lie here. I knew some of the deck lists going in, and I saw that, I saw your list, I saw Heart of Findle. I'm like, people are going to want this card right after. So I went to every vendor. I said, if you get one, what are you selling it for? They're like, oh, probably like $200. I said, okay, if you get one, you let me know. And I went everywhere and they never got one. Nobody was giving them up. And then you won, you bastard. And then the price shot up to like 280 or something like that. And I felt bad spending. I think someone cut me a deal and I bought one for about 230 and I felt bad about it. And now I feel great about it. It's just insanity. But this balance of printing super strong cards, or rather even slightly strong cards at that rarity, I feel like what you're saying, Michael, where you're saying even Tunic can be problematic, but they've reprinted Tunic so many times. And I feel like that is a whole different ballgame, because on a scale of power level, like where would you put Heart of Fyendal versus something like Tunic, Daniel? Like like how far apart are they?
It's pretty drastic, I would say.
Yeah. Like
Tunic's a must-have in every deck, at least for your sideboard. It's not close, I don't think.
Yeah. I feel like this is a whole other discussion. Like I don't want to get too much in the weeds about collecting and rarity and such, but I feel, I don't know, man. Like I like you mentioned, like $500 or $1,500 for a deck is an incredible turnoff. And I know that because I have been looking to get back into Magic, let's say. Like they just announced these Lord of the Rings cards, and I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And I was like, oh, maybe this is what I want, a nice launch pad. And then they're like, premium product, $1 bajillion, a 1/1 card. I'm like, I'm never, ever touching any of these cards. It's gross. All right. Limited is what we are going to be talking about. And again, I think a lot of people are very happy that we are going to be jumping back into a limited environment, frankly, with a set that looks to be built purely for this. And again, big thanks to Brian Gottlieb, who, when he was talking about this, I remember all the way back from US Nationals, he was talking about Outsiders, and even prior to that, he's like, just wait. And I think he undersold it ultimately. So let's dig into limited, and specifically we'll start with sealed before we get to draft. And I want to ask your thoughts regarding, I guess, a couple words and maybe a couple paragraphs regarding what basic sealed strategy looks like. What are the basic tenets of basic sealed strategy? I'll start with you, Michael. When you're looking to build your sealed deck, obviously you've got your packs in front of you, but before you even know what's in the packs, what kind of strategies and theories are you playing around with your head that to know what path you're going to go on?
Yeah, so the most important thing is have a general idea of what a good deck for each of the heroes looks like, because usually in your pool you'll have a good deck for one of the heroes. And so if you can have a decent idea of what that is, so basically like you look at each hero and kind of look what they're trying to do, try to find reds that fit what they're trying to do. An example from the new set would be Arachne is looking for a lot of red stealth cards because they're able to play a red stealth card and it gets go again naturally, and then they get to do something else afterwards. So they want red stealth cards that lead into something else. And if you have a lot of strong red stealth cards, then you can play Arachne probably. And you want to kind of just have an idea of what each different hero wants for their deck, and then you open up your sealed pool eventually and kind of see what you have. Hopefully it fits one of those strategies.
That's a good start. Dan, in terms of sealed, you're squaring up, you got your 6 packs in front of you. What's running through your mind?
In this set, I'm just hoping to get some death touches. But I think the big thing is you kind of want to separate your cards by class and talent, and then sometimes you'll just have significantly more cards for a class, and that can kind of help dictate what you should play. I do think a lot of the commons in this set do favor one hero specifically. So like what Michael was saying, if you kind of understand where the cards belong, you can kind of see where your power cards are and just follow that.
That's not a bad strategy. A lot of this, like you mentioned, Michael, knowing what the decks are in advance, and obviously it's not classic constructed, but if okay, if I'm playing Riptide, Riptide is going to suck if I don't have XYZ. So that is, I guess, one way to just go down that decision tree and say, do I have, or like you mentioned, Arachne having the first attack being a stealth go again. You could be like, okay, do I have enough stealth cards to even consider Arachne or do I have to switch gears ultimately? I think that's a fair, jumping off point. And that, I guess, sort of leads to the fact that if you want to do well in a sealed event, you have to start your homework well before. And, for limited players like you, I don't have to get into how many hours you guys have probably practiced drafting ahead of a major tournament, but I'm sure that can I ask you guys, does it exceed the amount of CC practice you guys do?
For me, it doesn't, but that's more because of the logistics of getting a draft together is a lot harder than the logistics of practicing CC. Like, I think in Lille, I remember one evening, me and Roger played like 5 hours of Prism versus Viscerai because he was just was feeling really worried about his deck choice basically before Lille. So we played a bunch of hours of that, gave him and he just got a bunch of reps. And you can't do that with draft. You need 8 people to fire a draft pod.
For you, Daniel, ideally, if, all things equal, let's say, are you putting more hours into your limited practice or are you putting more hours into your CC practice?
I think definitely CC. There's just less to figure out for limited. Especially with Uprising, I don't think I did more than 4 drafts to prepare for nationals, just because we already figured it out.
Pardon me.
For Worlds, we went back and did more drafting, but for nationals, we really just kind of sacrificed that because I don't know if there's a ban or something, but there's a lot to figure out for CC.
All right. So that said, you guys are obviously putting in time into these things ahead of time. It's not just show up, rip the packs, and just see what the best cards are. There's some thought process that goes in behind ahead of this. How would someone, let's say, prepare, like you mentioned, Michael? You want to know what the decks can do and how the cards synergize so that you can kind of pick out and see immediately. How would somebody go about doing that without, let's say, what is the easiest way that somebody can say, okay, I only have an hour ahead of my draft tomorrow or ahead of my pre-release tomorrow? What would be a good way for them to sort of approach that initial homework, that sort of preparation ahead of the actual tournament? Are you suggesting perhaps that do they go and look up deck lists that people have sort of put up on February, let's say, or is it more so along the lines of just go through the cards and see what kind of gels well?
Yeah, I think specifically for outsiders, if you look through the Ranger cards or the Assassin cards, you can be like, who is this card for? Because a lot of the time the cards aren't going to be as strong in one of the heroes as the others. I guess a good example are yellows. A lot of the yellow ninja cards are probably more Benji cards than Katsu cards. And a lot of the yellow stealth cards are probably more Uzuri cards than Arachne cards, because when you play a yellow stealth card with Uzuri, you're just going to swap it out some of the time. Whereas Arachne doesn't really want to play a 2-power go again. Uzuri doesn't care because they're all enabling the hero power attack reaction.
Daniel, somebody wants to put some time in ahead of ahead of their pre-release. What's the best way for them to spend an hour, let's say?
Sure. Yeah, we have a lot of really good tools now. Number one's February, right? Just look at all the cards. Basically do what Michael says, try to understand what cards go to which hero. And then you can also go on Draft FAB and generate 6 random packs. It won't be completely accurate for what packs look like, but you can kind of just play around. You can probably get to a pretty good spot in an hour, I think.
That's not bad. That is very good advice, definitely. Again, and this is what I always tell people. I say, a lot of it is just the work you put in outside of the actual 50-minute game clock that you guys are playing. People need to understand that success goes beyond just drawing well and executing proper sequencing. A lot of it is the prep. So would you then say that, a lot of this goes down to the fact that knowing how things work, a lot of the times it's just familiarity, because we're going to see heroes that have returned from the past, like Azalea, Katsu. Some people have been playing these heroes for God knows how long, since the beginning. Do you believe that there is merit in taking a deck that perhaps might on paper seem weaker than, let's say, the Riptide that you potentially could put together, but given the fact that, hey, I've got 150 games on Katsu, maybe I should just play Katsu because I understand it. Daniel, do you think that familiarity versus card pool is that an equal an equal playing field?
That's a tough one. I think if you're familiar enough with the hero, you should know if the pool's playable. And if it's playable but not necessarily the best pool, then I think I would go that way. I feel like the set you can get I don't know if trapped is the right word, but stuck with not being able to play your whole hand. on like offense and defense. So I think having familiarity with the cards and the heroes is actually a pretty big deal.
For you, Michael, you're definitely synonymous with something like Icelander, and you might be drafting a bunch of Icelander as well. How much of it is like when you're sitting down, you say, hey, you yourself just mentioned that you're totally okay drafting Uprising over and over and over again. And I guess somebody who wins as much as you do would probably say that. But the same thing is like when you rip that first pack, if all things are equal, you've got like a blue ice card and like, some like a Blaze Headlong in there. Are you leaning towards familiarity and comfort over perhaps, saying, well, Blaze Headlong might be the best pick in this deck or in this pack, but I'm more comfortable playing Icelander, so I'm going to take the Icelander oriented card.
Yeah. So this actually, in my opinion, really depends on what your goals are for the draft you're sitting down. If your goal is to win at all, like win above all else, versus if your goal is to like learn and get better at the game. When I am competing in a tournament and my goal is to do the best, I am going to value familiarity over like what I think might be the most powerful pick at times, because I think my personal win rate, maybe drafting Icelander, is going to be higher than if I'm drafting a medium or even a slightly better Fi or Dromai deck, maybe a slightly worse Icelander deck I'll do better with. But if your goal is to get better at the game and learn as much as you can, you should try to be flexible and try to take what you think will, like if you were a perfect player, what would lead you to have the highest win rate, which would be trying to pick the Blaze Headlong over the blue Frosting or whatever.
Yeah, I guess that definitely makes sense. I mean, when I'm busting packs or I'm drafting, a lot of the times, especially earlier on, I was just like, I know Katsu. That's all I know. I don't know anything about Brute, Guardian. Dorinthia is a completely different language for me. Like I'm not even going to touch any of that. So there was comfort in doing that. But at the same time, this is not a draft. It's going to be sealed. There's going to be cards that you're going to open in those 6 packs that, if you know everything, one of them might just sing to you and say, this is what you're doing. Have you guys identified any of those cards, Daniel? Let's say when you're looking at you open those 6 packs. What cards are basically the build arounds? The ones that you open and you say, even if the rest of the pool for this hero is mediocre, this is what we're doing. What are those cards to you?
I think, interestingly, this is the first set where I feel like rares are actually like a big deal. Like they feel like rares. So I would definitely start by looking at the rares you open. Which is kind of like how Magic drafts go. We never really had that before. I think the number one is Death Touch for me, for sure. It doesn't have Go Again, but it's just like so above rate compared to the other commons and rares. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm more looking for like good generics than build arounds. Like I'm hoping to see like some Rabbles, some 2-for-6s. Was it Infectious Host? I think is one of the good rares. It's like a 0-for-4.
So just for those who might forgot, Death Touch is the 6 attack red. So it comes in rainbow. I think the red is a 1 cost 6 attack. It can only be played out of Arsenal, but upon hit, it's give your opponent a inertia, blood rot, or frailty token. And those tokens are disgusting. When you have an opportunity, it's not at random. It's not like roll a dice and figure out which one they get. If they're like clinging to life, you give them a blood rot, and then you basically gum up their turn. A frailty against against Kodachis or against daggers or against other stuff, against an archer. Like there's so many different opportunities. But what you said actually kind of rings true. Like I've drafted a lot of Magic in my life, and the first thing you typically do is like, hey, you just go straight to the rare, see what it is. Is it playable? Is it over the top? And I feel like in Flesh and Blood, we haven't really had that, like you mentioned. Like there are cards in the rare slots that are awesome, but like how many Tales of Varia drafts are you looking at where you're like, okay, what are my Blue Guardian cards? Do I have a Bramble Spark? Things like that. What are my Red Lightning cards? And it didn't kind of feel like that because a lot of those cards were never in the rare slots. The rare slots were kind of passed around and thrown about, willy-nilly all the way till the end. For you, Michael, you're opening your sealed pack. Death Touch, I guess you said, like it could be a build around card, certainly, but what is the card that if you open, you're saying, I am playing this hero because I busted this card?
If I had to pick one card, it's probably Collapsing Trap. I'm probably hard stuck on Riptide if I open a Collapsing Trap.
Which one is the collapsing trap again? Is that the one that
if they attack with an attack with go again, and you block with collapsing trap, they discard their hand and draw however many cards they discarded -1.
Yeah, that kind of sells it for me too. Like if I drew that, like part of it would just be like I will take all the L's just so I can goon one ninja. Like that's all it would be for me. It's like you cannot do anything anymore. Do you guys have any strategies moving in, or do you guys know more or less, what you want to play going into that tournament or to the pre-releases, Michael? Like, are you have one that you're just desperate to try out?
I guess I would say I am most interested in trying out Riptide. I think he is the most unique hero we've got in this set. I guess maybe Uzuri's up there too, but I'm very interested in trying out Riptide, seeing how he plays, I guess.
Unique is kind of like the way that, you're not ugly, you're unique. Like that's, I don't know how many times I've been called unique. It's like, no, I'm not interested. But you're unique. My mom thinks I'm cool. It's kind of along the same lines. What about you, Dan? Dan, there's no Phi this time. So what the hell are you going to be forcing?
I think my current plan for sealed at least, I think my plan is if I open Death Touch or a lot of Virulent Touch, I think is the other one, I'm just going to play Riptide. Otherwise, I'm probably just playing Veggie.
Sounds good to me.
Because they're both like low synergy and pretty consistent.
Is it a red card? Does it have go again? Let's do it. Like let's just make it happen. So sealed is what we're gonna be playing for the pre-release again. That kicks off on the Friday the 17th, which I think is St. Patrick's Day. So that should be fun. Drink after is all I have to say. Don't ever drink and draft. It seems like a terrible thing, but draft is definitely the next thing on the docket here because it's pre-release is going to be sealed, but the rest is not. I mean, a lot of the other armories, etc., are going to be draftable. I think Pro Tour is going to be a multi-format. Am I right on that? Yeah. Pro Tour is going to be multi-format as well. So you're going to see plenty of drafting. I think it's going to be like 3 rounds on day 1, 3 rounds on day 2, and then the top 8 and all that other stuff. So there's going to be a lot of draft strategy that's going to go around. And for you two who have done more Uprising drafting than probably anyone in the world that I can think of, draft strategy for this seems like it's going to be a completely different ball game than, let's say, what UPR was. Do you guys agree with that, Dan? Do you think that that's like a fair statement that this one is just kind of leagues different than what Uprising was?
Other than the Ninja Mirrors, I do agree. The Ninja Mirrors might play out similarly, but every other class is really good at blocking and wants to block.
What about you, Michael? Do you like how different is Uprising feeling? Sorry, is Outsiders feeling to you than Uprising, given that you've got like hundreds of drafts now?
So there's kind of like 2 axes for this question. There's like how it is in the actual drafting process versus how it is in the actual games. I think the games like Dromai and Icelander were both very weird heroes that had like very interesting play patterns that don't really line up with what we'll see in Outsiders. Ninjas will play kind of similarly, I guess, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but Outsiders is all physical based. All your things that block, you can block for the most part, and it will make the format feel like more, I think it's more new player friendly and more kind of intuitive than maybe Uprising was. Though the draft process, I think the draft process will feel better because of hybrid cards, because there's more good generics in the format. I think you can potentially stay open a little bit longer, though I am still kind of sad that they stayed with 14 card packs, because it means you're still going to potentially be struggling for playables more often than you would in an older format like Tales of Aria.
That's a good point that you made, which is like staying open longer, drafting more generics and things like that, because you didn't really get that in UPR. In Uprising. I feel like Uprising had such small margins of leeway that you had to sort of squeak in a pivot here or there. You might have opportunity, reading signals, seeing what's going on into card 3, 4, 5. But if you didn't lock that in at a certain point, like you were basically married to your deck after pack 1, pick 5. If not, you're basically conceding that entire pod. How, when it comes to drafting, I guess the first question I want to ask you guys, as two of the best limited players in the world, what are you open that pack 1? Are you immediately looking to pick up generics and peel the generic cards out? Like, if there's no one class card that is just leagues ahead of everything else, are generics the way to go? And not just from a perspective of staying open, but just from the perspective of even later on, they're not going to be available because people are going to keep peeling them. To you, Dan, how important are generics early on in the draft process?
I think it's like very format dependent. Like for Uprising, I didn't want generics. I wanted to send the clearest signal I possibly could. Like I wanted to take the 1 out of 2 5 commons and just make that clear from the start. Where I think early on in the set, I'd be looking at trying to take generics and hopefully get rewarded for staying open. I don't know. I'm always a big fan of sending signals rather than receiving them. So we'll see.
So you've got 2 absolute piss-ass garbage FI cards in your pack. Yeah. And you're just peeling them. You're saying screw you to the erase face. You're just tossing it away. You just want to send a signal to the body on your left that you are FI and they should just back the F off. Is that what you're saying?
If it's the strongest signal I could send, yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah, just that's strong.
Like if there's 3 cards for all the other classes and I can't clearly communicate that I took one of this class, I would take a bad FI card. Yeah.
You just write it on the bauble. Just be like, I took a FI card. Slide it over and say back the hell off. So you're all about just kind of peacocking yourself around and being like, I am the Benji player, or I'm the ninja player here. Like, is that?
Yes, but I also think that was kind of key for Uprising specifically because of, like you said, you only get 4 picks to pick where you're supposed to be. So you can send the heavy signal, you don't have to follow it. Worst case, you're just kind of ruining another person or 2's deck that you hopefully play against.
Michael, do you think that generics in this set are going to be more coveted than class cards?
Probably. I think going back to the 14 card pack thing, it is kind of hard to make sure you're you need to, or the 14 card packs means it's going to be hard to make sure you have enough playables. If you're wish-washing around, if you pick 3 ninja cards and you're like, I'm actually not supposed to be ninja, and then you go into Ranger, you might struggle for playables, versus if you just pick 2 generics and then a ninja card, and then you're like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be ninja, and then you pick a Ranger card, you'll be in much better shape. Though I do think that, going back to your earlier question, I think that the reason you pick generics is to stay open, and not because if you're worried about wheeling cards, it doesn't really matter if you end up in ninja, whether you get a ninja card or generic card back at the end if they're around the same power level. They're just the only reason you just want to take generics earlier is to stay open.
Wouldn't there be an argument that to a certain degree, yeah, you're getting generics, and even if the generics are above rate or just average, wouldn't you be sort of taking a little bit of a hit on the power level of your deck if you're kind of pussyfooting around and not sure what you're taking? Meanwhile, everyone around you is absolutely just, plucking all the best class cards out of there. And then when you do eventually have to pick a hero, you're left with scraps, I suppose, to a degree. And, at what point is it important to make a stand and just say, this is the direction I'm going? How deep into the draft do you have to make that determination? Let's say, Michael, we'll go to you first.
It's hard to know, because if you go back to Tales of Aria, I feel like you could be pretty open between 2 heroes until even the start of pack 2. If you just got a pretty deep lightning pool, you had mostly lightning cards, you had some earth, you had some ice, you could still be between Lexi and Briar till pretty late in the draft. Compared to Uprising, where, like we were saying earlier, you pick 5, you have to be like, yes, I am Icelander. I don't care how cut I get. I'm stuck. It's too late to switch. I'm Icelander now. So without playing in Outsiders, it'll be hard to really figure that out. It kind of depends on the power of the generics. It depends on how, if we look deep at the card pool, how bad the last few cards in every pack is going to be. That'll do a lot to determine when you really need to lock in your hero choice.
How about yourself, Daniel? You're sifting through the cards, pack one, pick 3, 4, 5, 6. How late into these pack picks can you go and still sort of be floating about without, drawing a line in the sand?
Yeah, I think my early thought is I want to hedge early, like take some power cards in classes and kind of wait to see how it plays out. Like I think the generics are like super deep. Like I think every generic, at least in red, is like actively good in at least one deck, which kind of concerns me because that means like everyone can stay open, and then no one has information until like it's too late. So I don't know. I think it's important to like identify the power cards for specific heroes and classes and try to like. I'd be probably looking to balance between 2 through the first pack and then kind of commit at the end of the first pack.
That's like the difficult part here, because it seems, again, we're always going to compare this to whatever the previous, I guess, draftable set was, which it was Uprising, right? I'm not going crazy. It was Uprising. We did Uprising, then we did Dynasty, and now we're still in the Dynasty era. And am I the only one who thought Dynasty was just like meh? Like I'm gonna outwardly say it. If I was ranking all the sets, Dynasty is probably dead last. Is that a fair assessment?
Could have been printed, and I probably wouldn't have noticed. I'll say that.
Look, and I'm very much somebody who, and I'm going to use a Star Wars reference on this. When The Last Jedi came out, I said I'm going to reserve judgment on this movie or this entire sequel trilogy until it's complete, because it's a whole story and we have to hear it all before we pass judgment. And then when it all came out, I was like, yeah, no, this is incredibly ass. Like, this is totally not correct. But for Dynasty, it feels like there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that will eventually come back and be relevant. Like, what is the wounded bull of that set that somebody like Michael's going to just be like, oh, this is valuable. Let me take it out of my, like it's currently balancing the coffee table. Like, let me just take that under the table, like kind of thing like that, I feel like Dynasty has been such just like this poof of smoke, and it's dissipated, and and it's like, like the magician that just goes like poof, ninja dust, and then and he's still there. There's no more glitz or glamour or anything like that. It's a magic trick kind of gone wrong, but we don't know. We don't know if we're going to appreciate it yet. But Outsiders already, it's such a great thing. But I do remember when we're all drafting Uprising, it's like, okay, if I want to be Icelander, I need to find blue ice cards to really unlock the potential of this hero. If I want to be Dromai, I need red cards to activate go-agains and such on some of these other pieces and whatnot. And for 5 was just like, yeah, just send it. Like, just send it. I already get 3 Phoenix Flames for free. Like, and a weapon, like, amazing. Like, just send it. Do you feel like this set is not going to have those kinds of restrictions? And I understand that, Arachne wants stealth cards, and you need arrows to fire from your arsenal, etc. And Riptide likes playing traps. But do you think that this set is just overall much more open and for exploration from each particular hero? Or do you feel like there's just, if you don't have blue ice cards, you're going to feel pain. If you don't have these types of cards, you're going to feel pain. What do you feel about that, Daniel?
Yeah, I think every hero does want pretty specific stuff. I also think there's a lot of overlap. So like I do think like design-wise, it's looking really good without playing it. But like there's 6 heroes, right? And I think like there are specific cards that are much better for each of them. So I think the real trick is going to be just making sure you're one of the solo heroes for whatever hero you're playing. But yeah, I don't think there's enough like go again outside of Ninja that you can kind of like, I don't know. I'm trying to say, I think you do kind of have to understand how to build your deck and what cards you need. Or you're going to be stuck like blocking for over blocking instead of like attacking or something like that.
How about for you, Michael? Do you think that this set here is going to like live up to all the hype regarding being just this behemoth of a limited set?
I don't really know, honestly. I really hope so. With the way that there's 2 heroes for each class, I think that there's kind of like your card pool hopefully fits one of the 2 heroes, and you'll have to know kind of what each hero wants to figure out which which hero you want to be based on what cards you end up with. But I think like because of that like duality of each class, that kind of just means that no matter which side of the like whichever archetype you end up on, there's probably a good home for it. You just like have to know what to prioritize to have a good version of whatever archetype you end up in.
All right, so I'm going to ask you just two more questions regarding basic strategy here, because Classic Constructed is such a different ballgame when it comes to playing, and Limited requires not just, being able to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, so to speak, sometimes, but ultimately, when you're playing in Constructed, I don't know how many times I've been casting matches where you see somebody say, oh, like they're looking through their opponent's graveyard. I do it as well. You want to see what threats are left, etc. You can't do that in this because you don't know what your opponent has. If you were in a Classic Constructed, you go up against, a Bravo, you're like, okay, I've seen 2 Crippling Crushes. There's one more lurking about. Like, I have to worry about it. Or I've seen all 3 red pummels and things like that. What are some basic strategies in the actual gameplay? For example, you've got a hand that, you could do something with, but your opponent is just presenting a decent attack. How do you approach these types of scenarios for the average gamer who might not understand the basic sort of give and take of constructing like a masterful turn? Like, what are some, average or intermediate types of tips that you can give the player who's playing in that limited match? Heroes aside, just some basic tips, Dan. I don't know if you've got some that you can just kind of wheel out of your hat here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of like ground level one is just playing efficiently. So like being able to apply some value to your cards and use them to maximum value. So like if you have a 0-for-4 that blocks for 2, don't block with that card, probably. Because you're getting 4 points on offense versus 2 on defense. It's kind of that. That's kind of like the ground level thing, especially in limited. Just playing at max efficiency will get you there a lot of the time. So then number 2 is understanding kind of your win condition and your game plan, and just always playing towards that.
Michael, how about for yourself? You've played so much limited in life. There's got to be some strategies that lend themselves to limited gameplay, but not necessarily to constructed.
Honestly, there's not really. You really just do need to maximize the efficiency of your hand. You look at your hand, you're like, if I don't block, how many points of value is this hand worth? And then now if I block with this card or this card, how many points of value is the hand worth? And you just like do that for all the different possible combinations. And as you like practice it, you'll get better at it. You'll find shortcuts, just like assigning value of each card individually instead of having to do it all as one whole. But honestly, just getting every point of value that you can out of every hand will win you a huge % of your limited games.
I find that some of the biggest mistakes that new players will make, or some of the I wouldn't even call them mistakes, but some of the aspects of their gameplay where they can clean up and really help themselves in massive ways is purely from the standpoint of all things equal. If they a lot of them will be like, well, my hand is great, so I'm just going to not block because my hand is going to do a lot of damage. But when they're done that turn, they might be left with like 2 cards left in hand that, so only one goes in arsenal and like this one was expendable. That's 3 life or 2 life that they could have given back. I think that on defense, you need to also be thinking about what you're doing on your follow-up turn. Like you mentioned, Dan, like if you've got a 4 for 0 that blocks for 2, like you have avenues here. Like, okay, this is what I'm presented right now. So if I block this way, I can still do X, Y, Z. But if they follow up, you have different degrees of turns that you could put. Like, this is my weakest turn if I give up these 3 cards. My next weakest is if I give up these 2 and such. And I think that cleaning up those, like you mentioned, Michael, those efficiency lines and making sure that you're not left with any type of extra scrap metal, as it were. Like, you want to be able to use every card you have, because at the end of the day, if you're left with extra cards in your hand, you've done it wrong. So I think that that's certainly a great point to make is, efficiency and just looking beyond like what's happening on any given moment, I think is very important, especially in limited. Before we get to the Go Again segment, gentlemen, which is a Patreon exclusive where I'll even let you guys swear. You guys could even swear. I don't know if you're near anybody with sensitive ears, but well, I'll let you say some bad words in the Go Again segment. One question that I think I got the most out of everybody is pack one, pick one related stuff. Now, legendaries aside, greed aside, what is a bona fide pack one, pick one card? It's not easy. I mean, I've been playing a lot of Lexi just on stream lately, just to sort of learn that hero. And to me, something like Codex of Frailty is such a damn good card.
Yeah, that is very good.
So you said including Majestics?
Well, you know what? We'll give me a rare and a Majestic.
Okay.
And so if you guys have one of each, now pack one, pick one, you see the Majestic, you're probably going to yoink it. But oftentimes players are usually even, you know, the average player, we're going to see a Majestic. It might be absolute dog water and they're going to pick it anyways because it's just the rarest card. And to them, that is oftentimes signifies a power level that they might not understand or is inapplicable in this particular format. So I'll take one Majestic and one rare off of each of you. Whoever wants to go first, just toss it out there.
Daniel's been singing the praise of Death Touch. I think I am going to preemptively steal his answer for rare.
Yeah. Then he's going to come back and say yellow Death Touch. No, you can't. So, I think Death Touch is just a really good card. Can we all just agree that in the rare slot, is that just like our unanimous pick as a pack one, pick one?
That or Infectious Host. If I'm thinking the right card, the 0/4 that it duplicates any of the tokens that you have. Like it plays on your opponent.
Yeah, it's pretty good too.
On play. I think like power level, they're pretty close.
How about yourself? Is there anything other than Death Touch? Like Death Touch is just, it's so good.
Like I can see a world where Ravenous Rabble or Brush Off are actually the real pack one, pick ones.
Are they? Oh, they're bringing back Ravenous Rabble, right?
Yeah, I think we have to play the format more, but like you might just be that desperate for Go again, and you might just be that desperate for like interaction with unblockable damage.
I feel like,
but we'll see.
Like the one thing that got me with Death Touch while I was playing was realizing that when my opponent doesn't have an arsenal and you play Codex of Frailty to put like a Death Touch in your arsenal, it peels away a card from their hand and puts something into their arsenal. So it's like taking away a blockable card. And I'm like, oh, you can't do shit. Like you can't do anything here. This is brilliant. I did that to somebody and I think I put like an Endless Arrow in, and I'm like, all right, now I can Endless Arrow you a million times. Like it was just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Is there anything else, I guess, like you guys are feeling, or is just Death Touch just the nuts rare?
I haven't really looked at Majestics yet, just because you don't really expect those.
I guess for rare still, I'm not really sure. I would have had a better answer if we recorded this a week later after pre-release and I got beat by some of these rares.
We can always revisit. Like I, honest to God, like next week I've got Brian Gottlieb. Brian Gottlieb's going to come on. He was supposed to be on this week. And he's like, put me on after everybody's mad at me or praises me. Like I will answer all the hate or the love on your show. He also said, he's like, I could be a lot more open about the set and talking about it. So that's why I brought you two gigantic brainiacs on here to talk to me about Limited, because partially is because I'm going to a few and I would love, this is me just exercising my reach and influence to bring you guys on and be like, this is for me. This is not even going to be aired. So I appreciate you guys here just to chat Limited. Yeah, I guess that, I mean, like in terms of pack one, pick ones, is there a card, I suppose, if we want to end on this discussion, is there a card that in your first draft that you open that you're hoping you find? Like everyone wants everybody wants I mean, the Fables aside, legendaries aside, but like you're drafting, you find that card and you're just like, oh yeah, it's on. Is there any feeling or card giving you that vibe, Dan?
I don't think so. Like, I think a lot of the cards really are like specific to 1 to 2 heroes. I don't think they're like, maybe the new erase space, I forget what it's called. The 2
Amnesia.
Yeah, maybe like Amnesia. This is like a nice safe one. It blocks for 3. It's on rate attacking and relevant hit effect.
Yeah, it's funny because now the mentality is, oh, it's a popper. It doesn't matter. that thought process is out the window.
Yeah.
Michael, your first draft, rip open that pack. You smell it. I don't know what you do with the cards. I don't know what gives you your magical powers. I had a friend who used to lick the first pack of every box he opened, and I was like, "You are disgusting." For luck, whatever we do, but for you, I know you can't do that. But what are you hoping to open?
I think I'm still just going with Collapsing Trap. The card's great. I want to play Riptide. Card's powerful.
Are you playing Riptide because, again, you're doing damage on your opponent's turn? Is that all you're about, Michael Hamilton?
No, I played Guardians for a long time.
Sicko. You're a sicko. I'm here to expose all of your nonsense, Michael Hamilton. Now's a good time also to ask, because it's on the record, and I do kind of feel bad, but I don't actually. But like the whole fact that I've kind of nicknamed you the Angel of Death. Are you okay with that? Like, is that okay?
I don't actually know what that means.
Oh, are you not aware of the Michael Hamilton memes that have been going on?
No, I saw the title of the episode and I watched part of it. I heard I was the Angel of Death, but I don't really know what that means. So.
You are the last thing people see when they die. Like, that is what you do. And you're such a kind and soft-spoken soul that it's never expected. You know, it's like when Ned Flanders appeared, like it turned out to be the devil in like a Halloween episode of The Simpsons. It's the least person you expect. It's the same thing. It's you show up, and then you just pull the plug on some poor soul, and that's it. But I just want to make sure. Listen, Michael, yeah. I part of this is because it's important to make sure that you're okay with it, and the other part about it is because I don't want you showing up at my door and killing me in the middle of the night. Like, that's kind of where we're at. Daniel wouldn't do that. Daniel's a good guy. Daniel, I've only heard the nicest things about Daniel. I only know you as a ruthless, just eviscerator of life force out there in the battlefield. You too, Daniel. But if Michael wasn't here, it would be you. But it has to be him. Okay, but you're definitely next up. So with your Grim Reaper clothing and stuff like that, like just get that fitted. But yeah, Michael, I sincerely appreciate the fact that A, you're cool with it, and B, I am still alive. That. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You're good.
I'm also glad you're still alive.
Thank you. Your nickname is better than the one I gave Roger, so it's all right.
What can I ask what Roger's nickname is?
Yes, I once referred to him on an episode of the show as your butler, and it kind of stuck. No. Yeah, he's aware of it, and I don't know if he likes it or not. I think he does because we're good friends. He's thrown shots at me, and he's an awesome person, and you should give him a raise. Is all I'm saying. All right, gentlemen, I do sincerely appreciate you guys sharing your insights about Limited. It's very important, especially now moving in. We're going to a wicked ass set of outsiders. Daniel Rutkowski, number 2 in the world in Limited ELO. Where can we get more of your stuff? Are you producing any content? What's going on in the world of Dan Rutkowski?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DiscGolfDan. You can find some of the content I work on our team's YouTube and Twitter, which is TCG Runaway.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much. Michael Hamilton, the world champion, obviously, number 1 constructed ELO in the world, and I believe number 4 limited. So you're kind of slacking there, buddy. But
okay.
Yeah, there's Pro Tour coming up, so you can kind of gain some ground on Dan. But where can we get more of yourself? You're also doing the M&R podcast alongside Roger. So where's some more Michael Hamilton musings?
Yeah, that's the best place to find me, the Manor cast. It's M-N-R for Mike and Roger, Michael and Roger. Anyway, talk about Flesh and Blood every week. You can also find me on Twitter, though I'm not very active, at Hades Blade. And then I'm more active in the Manor cast Discord too. So if you have questions for me, that's probably the best place to get them answered. Though I'm not always the best at responding there either.
Well, you're an awesome person, and you're both 2 of the best players in the world of Flesh and Blood, hands down. And it has been my sincere pleasure to be able to pick your brains about Limited. So thank you guys both for being on the show. Big time.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Beauty. And again, big thanks to our sponsors. That would be at Kayfabe Cards. Go to kayfabecards.com, as well as BCW Supplies. Use the code ISB10. Get 10% off all of your purchases. And of course, to our wonderful Patreon supporters. You guys are great. Thanks for keeping the lights on. And if you are a Patreon Tier 2 Plus subscriber, you can get access to the Go Again segment, where these two clowns are going to go ahead and pull all the stops out and start. And one of them is going to say the F word. I don't know which one, but we're going to get one of them to... Dan is already regretting it.
Seems unlikely.
Yeah. Nonetheless, thank you guys for catching the Instant Speed podcast. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. We'll see you next time on ISB.